Right. So, what I want to talk about several things today. So this is Saturday. I want to address some stuff, different stuff, right? So I'm going to address the issue that we have around the world right now with invaders into all of these Western countries. Okay, I'm going to talk about that too, but also I want to talk about well, I want to talk about uh, hand-to-hand combat scenarios, right? So a lot of people they want to say, oh, this is no good and that's no good, and you know they don't have any experience with it, and they have never diligently trained in anything. There's a lot of armchair commandos out there when it comes to any martial art whatsoever. There's a lot of them. A lot of them. Now I'm going to tell you how I came up, how I learned how to fight, how I trained, and so forth. You know, the thing is that people think, oh, MMA, just go do MMA. Oh, you know what? I don't have any Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, you know, quote-unquote Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Brazilians got it from Japan, okay? So it's not Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, it's Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. You want to go look it up on YouTube. There's historic stuff showing the Brazilians training in, you know, with the Japanese and stuff, right? All the early guys that from Brazil down there training in Japan. So, what did I want to talk about? Oh yeah, so I got started in the martial arts in the 1970s. In the 1970s, that's when I was trained in the martial arts heavily, and I continued training for years, even on my own. After I left my Sifu and so forth, I trained on my own. When I had my room at the apartment that we lived in. It was a kwun. It was a dojo. It was a kwun. It was a training hall. You walked in. You opened the door. You walked in. You see the heavy bag. You see the dummy. Okay. Speed bags. All that stuff. My room was a training hall with a bed in the corner. And let me tell you, you know, that I didn't have the best grades back then because I was too busy thinking about training and fighting and stuff, right? And why was I always interested in training and fighting and getting better at fighting and stuff like that? Why? Why is that? Well, because when I was young, I always lived in rough neighborhoods. If there was a fight, a lot of times it generally was not a fair one. I was small as a kid. I'm not small now, you know, but I remedied that, you know, as I got older. But the thing is that, you know, I was small. I was always short. I was always skinny. And I always had the short end of the stick, so to speak, as far as, you know, when it came to I didn't have any advantages. As a matter of fact, you know, I had several brothers, and some of them had already, you know, left home, and you know, I had one of my two sisters was still at home for a while, and then she left. She left home at 16. I think it was 16 or 17. pregnant, got married, and anyway, her boyfriend was a welder, and he supported them. You know, he was a good welder too. But yeah, my dad, he went looking for that guy. He didn't approve of it. So anyway, they hid out for a while. They hid out for a while. That guy, I'm not going to give his name, but he better be glad that he hid out, because my dad would have you know, he would have done, he just would have taken him out. But you know, that's the way things were back in those days. Back in those days, if a man caught his wife cheating on him, he was legally allowed to, you know, whack her out. That was still on the books, you know, back in those days, as far as the law, the quote-unquote law was concerned, right? But that's getting away from me and the subject, right? So I always lived in bad neighborhoods. I was always having to fight, and I've moved around a lot over the years. But I had a fight one time in the 70s. I had a fight, and this guy got the best of me. He was bigger, and I didn't have any formal training at that point, you know. And this guy got the better of me, and the thing is that and it was at the bus stop. Okay, it was at the bus stop. A lot of things happen at bus stops as kids growing up. Usually it's after school, right? So anyway, got into it with this guy. He got the best of me, and the houses lining the street there, that house that was right there, the bus is here, that house is right there, the old guy on the porch. Of course, I'd probably consider him younger. Well, he's probably younger than I am, you know, back then at that point, but I considered him old. But he was this one guy that I knew. That was his granddad. I think it was his granddad. It might have been his uncle. It was either his grandpa or his uncle. And he was sitting in a rocking chair drinking something, you know, tea or something. They had a pitcher of tea or something out there. Anyway, he was sitting in that chair, and he saw the whole thing. And anyway, it turns out he was a kung fu master. Now, all of you guys are going to be like, that's bullcrap. That is a totally bullcrap story. I kid you not, it's for real. So anyway, my friend from school, he was already training with him. So the old guy, he invited, who didn't speak English, by the way. Everything got translated through my friend. So he invited me to come and get some training. And that's how everything started for me, learning martial arts and everything. So I've trained in several different martial arts. My favorite martial art was Wing Chun, and I've trained with several different Sifu and over the years. And I thought about going to Hong Kong and getting a certificate of instructor, you know, instructor certificate from the Athletic Association, but I didn't do it. But anyway, it doesn't matter. You know, I train martial arts for me so that I could protect myself and so forth. Yeah, and it's always done me well. It's done me right. But the thing is that a lot of people say, "Oh, you training that Wing Chun style? That stuff is crap." You know, I'm going to tell you right up front, any martial art could be quote-unquote crap if the person doesn't apply themselves to it, if they don't know what they're doing. If somebody only does the motions and they don't know what the motions do, they probably will get, you know, the short end of the stick in a fight if they don't know what those movements are about, right? So if I, somebody punches at me and I come in and I long sow them, that's just like a deflection, a deflecting wing, right? So if that comes across and over, that then the force is going that way. I mean, there's a lot of things that I could show you, but a lot of people, and I'll be honest too, I look at some of these guys that call themselves masters of Wing Chun on videos, they're not worth a crap. But I'm going to tell you the secret to becoming really good. I'm going to tell you a few secrets to becoming really good about fighting, okay? Fighting. You have to fight. To be a good fighter, you have to fight. You cannot stand by and speculate, theorize. Theory is no good. It goes out the window after you've fought a few fights, and you got to prove your theory. Does it work? Did you get your face busted open? Did you get your ribs broke? Anything like that? Did it work? If it didn't work, it didn't work. But see, that's a lot of people like to theorize. They say, oh, I do this martial art and it's awesome. Okay, well, how many fights have you had? I've had a lot of fights. I've had so many fights in my life that I don't even know how many fights I've had. And I've had fights against many opponents as well at the same time. And I'm not going to say I didn't get hit, because I've been busted up pretty good in fights, but still came out, still came out on top in the end. I'll tell you that it's not all like the movies. Fights are not all like the movies when it comes to martial arts and stuff. I mean, although I remember when I was in high school, I had a fight with this guy. He was a kung fu guy. He's Vietnamese kung fu. I don't know what style he proposed to be or anything, but we had this fight, and I hit him so hard his gums turned black, black and blue. It bruised the gums in his mouth. Didn't knock his teeth out, but I guess he had strong teeth or whatever. But I hit him really hard, and he showed me the next week. He's still black and blue in there, but because we had gone to the principal's office the next day, they said, they told us then and there, you and you, in the morning, principal's office, and if you're not there, we're going to come get you. You didn't want that to happen, because things were going to go bad. Worse. From bad to worse. Well, anyway, we got suspended from school for a week. We got a 7-day vacation. And when I got back, I got in one of my classes. One of the guys in my class, he had seen the fight, because the fight was on the school bus while it was still parked. And he says, man, that was the coolest fight I ever seen. He says, that looked like right out of a kung fu movie. And I was like, wow, that sounds pretty fun, But anyway, I did whoop that guy. And he had been a problem child with friends of mine as well before. He was a leader of a gang. And we had a big gang fight one time, and he pulled out weapons. The thing is, it was not supposed to be weapons, and he brought weapons, and it ended up we beat them anyway. And then that next week, I got into a fight with him, and then after we came back, we were just all cool, because we didn't want to get in any more trouble at school. But we were just all cool with each other from then on. But when we were sitting there waiting for our turn to see the principal for our punishment, he told me, he says, look, he says, I don't want to fight with you guys anymore. And he shook my hand. He was a man about it, right? But anyway, yeah. So the thing is that to be a fighter, you gotta fight. You got to have a lot of fights. And you know what? Back in those days, we knew that as martial artists. All of my friends were martial artists back then. All of them. All of them. I lived in and amongst the Asian community, and everybody was in martial arts. I was the only Wing Chun guy, right? But I had a friend of mine who was a Thai boxer, and his dad was a Thai boxing coach, and his cousin was a Thai boxer. And anyway, so, and he wanted to learn Wing Chun, and to work out with me with the Wing Chun, you know, because he thought it was very cool. So we did some of that together. We did some Thai boxing. We learned some Thai boxing tactics from his dad and his cousin, and so on. And then we had other friends. One guy was Kyokushinkai, and there was a Taekwondo guy, Shorin-ryu guy, Kenpo. Anyway, there was a bunch of different guys. And what we used to do is we knew that you cannot get good from just punching a bag or doing a form, okay? Doing a form, right? Right. Doing a form. You can't get good from just doing forms, okay? You have to fight. And we wanted to be as realistic as we could. So every 1 to 2 weeks, depending on how well we were all healed, this is going to tell you, okay, we would get together. We would say, oh, let's go to so-and-so's house. It's got a good backyard, or let's go to so-and-so's house, you know. Anyway, we'd all show up there, and we would have fighting matches. I'm not talking about sparring, okay? I'm not talking about getting completely covered head to toe in pads. No. We wanted to feel the punches, because you learn to respect a punch or a kick when you feel it, and you know not to be there the next time. It teaches you to be instinctually, it teaches you in order, you know, to not be there. So if somebody is using a particular type of kick or a particular type of punch or a certain type of strategy, and you see it, and you're going to be like, yeah, that hurt. And then you're going to do something accordingly in order to not let it happen again. So, you know, you're developing your muscle memory for different types of martial arts. I might fight a Kyokushinkai guy this week, and maybe a Kaju Kenbo guy, or maybe I'll fight a Thai boxer. 2 or 3 matches, okay? 2 or 3 matches is what you're going to be in. And it's going to be until the other guy quits. It's not going to be for rounds. It's not going to be timed. You're going to get in there, and it's going to be until the other guy just says, okay, I'm done. Right? So that's what we did. I fought bunches of different guys, and they were all skilled martial artists. You know, we're talking 2nd, 3rd degree black belt, 4th degree black belt some. Okay? And yeah, just that's how you get good. And you have to use your system. There was no mix and match back in those days. You know, it was considered kind of dishonorable to like mix something in with your art if you did that. You gotta work your art until you master your own art. Right? So you always see people, you know, with Wing Chun. I'm going to use Wing Chun as an example, you know, because I'm very skilled at it over the years. You know, I used it in all of the fights that I had. I mean, yeah, I did dabble in a little bit in other arts, but, you know, the thing is that what you have to realize is that you're not just going to, if you're going to fight with somebody, you're not just going to go, you're not going to do that. You're not going to be like, right? You're not going to do that sort of thing. You're not going to do this. You're not going to do that. No. If I'm going to fight with somebody, I'm going to be standing there with my hands down. Generally, because you're just talking with them, and it's getting a little bit heated, and then something happens. You have to be able to fight. To be a good fighter, you got to be able to fight in your street clothes, right? And you got to fight from your street stances, and you got to fight from postures that don't indicate that you know jack, right? Because the whole idea is to have the upper hand on the other person, right? The whole idea is to have the upper hand. To be looking ahead. You could have half the fight or even all of the fight played out in your mind before the fight even happens. You've already gone through 10 scenarios, right? So that's the thing. You got this tool chest, and the tool that you select from this tool chest, which is in your mind, is going to depend on the situation, right? It's going to depend on the situation. So your first tool is your brain. First tool is your brain. The second tool is going to be your awareness. Awareness and brain work hand in hand. So you position yourself a certain way. You already have things from your visuals in your mind of what's going to go down, what could go down. A lot of different. You're faster than a supercomputer in your brain when it comes to things like that. And that's the whole thing. That's the whole thing about that. But yeah, you get people that talk trash about Wing Chun all the time. I'm not even going to get into to some of the things I've seen and heard. But, if somebody hasn't practiced their art, they haven't practiced how to do a punch or a kick or a bong sao deflection or anything, a bilji, or they haven't practiced any of that stuff, in reality, they're going to have a hard time. You got to be able to use what you got, and don't resort to, schoolyard brawling. This stuff, right? You should never see that. And here's another thing. People that go into a ring, okay, and allow themselves to be hindered by rules. That's a big no-no with me. You want to fight me? Let's fight. No rules. But back when we were doing those matches, okay, when I was young, we would fight each other, different styles. We wanted to experience fighting, real fighting. There was no rules except for no eyes and no throat. The nads were open. And cup was optional, okay? The only protective equipment that there was a mouthpiece, okay? You had to wear a mouthpiece because we all needed our teeth to eat, right? So we said, yeah, we got to wear a mouthpiece. And the second thing that we did is we had these little gloves. They were from Asia, and there wasn't much to them. They weren't even a glove. It was just a pad on the back of the hand here, fist pad, and it didn't even cover the whole area, just basically the knuckle area. And it was just a pull on like a sock, and it stopped right there at the wrist. That's all it was. And you were allowed to punch in the face, kick in the groin, kick in the legs, everything, right? Everything. So people say, well, what about Wing Chun against a boxer, blah, blah, blah. I talked about this one time before. I'm going to tell you this story, and I'm going to probably shut this video down. Let me check the time real quick. Alright, I'm 24 minutes. I forgot my timer. But the thing is, I told you guys this story one other time. I don't know if it's in any of the videos now. Sometimes I throw videos out after a little while because they refer to make a point. But my brother, when I was growing up, he was Golden Gloves boxer. And he constantly made fun of me for my martial arts training. And I let it go. I let it go for a long time. It irritated me, you know, it's like your older brother picking on you, you know, giving you a hard time, whatever. It's my brother, I respected him. He was always good to me as a brother. He was bigger than me. We got into a lot of scraps over the years when we were young. You know, mostly when we were little, you know, before I had any training whatsoever. But then I started training and training and training, and I never stopped training. I was training, always training hard, you know, all the way up into my 30s and 40s. I was always training hard. And so I think I was about 17, 18 years old, and he was giving me some crap. And you know, he was older than me, right? And he was experienced in the ring. You know, he had a lot of boxing matches. And I told him, I said, look, I said, let's go to the backyard right now. I said, I have respected you and not told you anything for years. I said, I'm tired of hearing your baloney. And I said, let's just go put the cards on the table right now. No pads, no nothing. Let's just have a fight. A real fight. I said, hit me as hard as you want. No pads, knuckles. Okay. He said, you sure you want to do that? He says, I'm a boxer. Like I was supposed to be scared of that, you know. But I was like, you know what? I have skills. I have skills. You haven't seen my skills because I never showed you my skills. He says, all right, whatever. So we went to the backyard. Less than 30 seconds, he was on the ground. I folded him. And with one kick to the liver, boom, down. He was down. He was hurting a lot. And I helped him up. I said, you done? He says, all right, I'll leave it, you know. I'll leave it alone, you know, like he wasn't going to talk trash no more. He said, all right, I'll leave it alone. And he put his hand up, and I grabbed his hand and pulled him up. That was the end of it. That was the end of him talking trash. But I told him after I got him on his feet, I said, let me tell you something. I said, just because I do Wing Chun Kung Fu doesn't mean I'm doing some kind of weak martial art, you know, and you think that you're superior because you know, done a lot of boxing in the ring, blah, blah, blah. I said, I got 8 weapons. He said, what? I said, I got 8 weapons. I said, you're confining yourself in your mind to 4. Or actually 2 to 2. Anytime I think of weapons, I think of 4 here and 4 there. Elbows, here, knees, feet. Okay. I said, I got 8 weapons. You know, I wasn't counting the palm. Palm is one I love to use. Okay. I said, you confine yourself to just your fists. I don't. You underestimated me and you paid the price. So, yeah. Yeah, well, I'm going to leave this video at that. But the thing is that you shouldn't underestimate anybody with martial arts. You definitely shouldn't underestimate anybody smaller than you or bigger than you, fatter than you. You shouldn't estimate anybody. It doesn't matter what they look like. Some guys are a total badass, and they're like, you know, they're chubby guy. You know, look at Sammo Hung. Sammo Hung was the guy that Bruce Lee fought in the very beginning of Enter the Dragon. He was chubby. They used to call him the Fat Dragon, but he was a good martial artist. You know, so don't ever underestimate people, and don't ever underestimate any martial art. Don't ever underestimate any martial art. A lot of people, a lot of people talk trash on YouTube in comments and stuff. You know what? If you watch a video, take super glue and put it on your hands, and then stick your hands on the table. Right? If you're good, if you think you're like really competent at some martial art that you've never done or never practiced, never been disciplined, yeah, just stay off of the keyboard. You have no business being on the keyboard. Even now, I'm old. I don't put up with nothing from nobody. I'm old. I'm not going to put up with nothing from nobody. I've seen too much and done too much. You know, I won't start something, but by God, they will know that they opened up the wrong can when they open up a can with me. You know, don't start fights. Don't run your mouth. Be quiet. Just let things ride. They go to put their hands on you, totally different story. Take them out. Anyway, let you guys go. We're going to talk about some stuff that's going on out there in the world. I think maybe Monday. I was going to do it today, but I'm not feeling in the mood because I don't like all that negativity. See you later.